Hey everybody, getting ready for block party number 90 this Friday, the 31st of December, 2021. So it'll be the New Year's Eve edition. I myself will be on until 1 p.m. Pacific time. But anyway, that gives us 6 solid hours to make really good progress across multiple fronts, as we outlined in the agenda in the email. So what I'd like to do is screen share and talk through how we might present all of this, all of what follows, right, to someone who is hearing it maybe for the first time, who's hearing the big picture of this. This is an acronym, T.H.I.S, transforming, healing, and intentionally saving life on Earth. So let's say they're hearing this for the first time. I'll put my fingers up whenever I mean the acronym, right? So let's walk through that, right? Now, there's an article which I won't read now, but which we may read on Friday for a Dear Umair segment, that talks about the default narrative in the media. And he was bashing the default narrative that basically the pandemic's over and, oh, Omicron is, it's some mild thing and it's evolving towards it being a cold, and all these lies that are being put out there and spread around. But he calls that the default narrative. He just calls it the narrative, and that it's so hard to go up against. I mean, this is Noam Chomskyan kind of stuff, right? Thought control in a democratic society. But anyway, so there's that default narrative. So I'm going to screen share now. So you've got the default narrative on the left and the new narrative on the right. Now see that the default narrative is basically a whole bunch of lies which are spun in such a way that we're focused on conflict between peoples, between races, international conflict, war, and division, and hoarding, the name of the game. Anyway, that's the default narrative is based on all that. In fact, we can talk about the default culture, the cultural context for this narrative, right? So you have culture, you have narrative, and then you have what I'll just call the game. What is the game that we play, right? And, to quote Ozzy Osbourne from the song Crazy Train from the early 80s, right? One person conditioned to rule and control. The media sells it and you play your role, right? So we each play our role in what? In the game. So these are kind of, the big three perspectives that I would look at the hyperobject of current society and how we got to be so omnicidal. You have cultural context, narrative, and game. And of course, the game here is really all about hoarding, right? And to a very real extent, dominating, right? And we have this cultural context and narrative, which include the story of evolution, where only the strong survive and it's kill or be killed. And in the end, it basically espouses violence as the ultimate measure. And in so doing, it dignifies violence. And that all goes hand in hand with, conflict and war and separation and all that. And then combine that with hoarding. And it's just a toxic cocktail of default narrative that we've grown up in, right? Cultural context, narrative, and game, right? With that, I'm going to pause and anyway, muting my mic.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with uh, COVID, that the biggest threat it poses is the division it's caused. I think that's bigger than the health risk, because it, you know, divided, we're so weak. And if you're busy fighting each other, you're not questioning the important things. That's kind of where I'm at right now. It's too many people are worried about arguing over whatever crap is latest in the news. A news that certainly has proven that we can't trust them in the last 2 years. If there's anything we've learned, that there's no no mainstream journalism that isn't doesn't have somebody's agenda behind it, rather than a reporting of facts. So pretty crappy place in history to be right now, but with enough of us persevering and holding up the science, hopefully enough people will listen, and enough of us will come together. I certainly think it's what motivates me.
Beautiful, Marco. Thank you. And, to that, I would be inspired to add that, I mean, this is our moment to come together and do this. We know how to come together, and we just need to, and I'm talking about all the people who are already in transformational conversations in the Zoomosphere, as well as those who are, I would say, ripe for joining one or more transformational conversations in the Zoomosphere, right? So let's take those who are, what's our goal here? And that'll become clear. That's really the new narrative. It's all contained in the new narrative. It's got its own, there's a whole new cultural context, a whole new narrative, and a whole new game, right? Within the new narrative. So anyway, let me screen share that. But fundamentally, this is about all of us co-creating this new narrative. This is just kind of my stab at it. But I would, basically say that it fundamentally has 3 parts, right? Part 1 is reality. We need to get real that climate change is not, a debate, right? It's a reality, and it's measured in well over 100 boops per year, maybe even over 200. And we actually have the data to calculate it, but just the analysis just hasn't been done. No one's, to my knowledge, done a detailed study on that, which is sorely missing. But anyway, the bottom line is we need to get really clear on our reality, right? Exactly what is the reality, which leads us to our second pillar, which is the reality of solutions, right? There are real solutions ready or almost ready to be deployed that can solve our most daunting problems, right? And we'll cover those, but first let me get the high level. And then there's the third pillar, which is a very special class of solutions, which is, I'll just call the meta solution, right? Or another way of saying it is collective superintelligence. And we'll talk more about that. But the basic idea is that the meta solution, which is basically, all of us coming together, it's basically, people coming together to solve our problems, to generate to not just generate the solutions and say, aha, got it, we can do this and this and this and this and this, but also get these solutions fully implemented at planetary scale, right? And it's an iterative, evolving process of all. These are kind of three layers, because our getting reality, our getting clear on the reality of our problems and of our solutions, right? That is phase one. That's layer one, getting clear. What is reality? We're constantly going to be getting better and better at discerning what reality is. Collective sense making, as Daniel Schmachtenberger and many others would call it. And then the second layer, or pillar if you prefer, I kind of think of them as layers, like of a layer cake. The second layer is, and I'm not really clear on the order, let's put it that way, because it all, everything impacts each other. But anyway, nonetheless, three layers. The second is the layer of solutions. There are so many solutions that the two big solutions will solve our three biggest problems. I repeat, our two biggest solutions that are ready to get developed and implemented at planetary scale will solve our three biggest problems: food healers and marine cloud brightening. What are our three biggest problems? Planetary overheating, the destruction of the biosphere, over and above that caused by planetary overheating, namely humans' assault on ecosystems around the world to destroy those ecosystems and run cattle, for example, or just overfish or overhunt, and slash and burn, logging, etc. Just totalitarian destruction, genocide on whole ecosystems. So that's our second of the three big problems. And the third is human hunger and, more generally, deprivation, not having a good, warm, clean place to sleep and shower and be fed, be nourished, have health care when you need it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So many basic human needs that need to become basic human rights. But the Food Healers program gets the dominoes tumbling for those basic human needs, starting with the most basic of all, which is hunger, nutrition. And by making it plant-based foods, we get the dominoes tumbling towards a vegan world, and therefore not just a halting of the assault on ecosystems for the production of meat and dairy, actually a reversal of those harms by returning land to nature. And then, of course, marine cloud brightening. So between those two mega solutions, we solve the three biggest problems that we have and get the dominoes tumbling for the rest of the solutions, both on saving and healing the planet and saving and healing humanity. With that, I take a pause, going on mute.
I think one of the things we have to, we've gotten in the habit of calling one of our big problems climate change, rather than the more accurate term, which is planetary global overheating. And when we refer to marine cloud brightening, for those that don't know, and there'll be plenty of information on it at Friday's block party, but you know, these ships and here just using filtered seawater, spraying it back out, and that's essentially mimics, you know, the waves crashing together and freeing some salt to evaporate, you know, particles to evaporate, and then they float up and they make very bright clouds as long as the salt particles are the right size, and these ships can do that. So that's when we talk about marine cloud brightening, that's the mechanism there.
Beautiful. Thank you, Marco. Yeah, so marine cloud brightening and then food healers, as indicated by the picture I'm showing on my screen of the community cafe. That's when we got the ball rolling on this project in Southern California in 2015 with our first community cafe program in Rosamond, California. Anyway, between those two solutions, again, we solve our three biggest problems and get the dominoes tumbling for solving all the rest of our problems. Because can you imagine the self-confidence that we will build as a species solving our three biggest problems? Exponential planetary overheating. Solving that means reversing that, by the way, cooling the planet, literally cooling the planet, like turning on the air conditioning system for the planet. The second is food healers, solving both ending destruction and reversing the destruction of the biosphere, and also ending hunger and starting the dominoes tumbling for meeting all basic human needs as basic human rights, regardless of whether you have money or not, right? It's as simple as that. 1, 2, 3, we solve our three biggest problems with two solutions, which are actually relatively low cost given the amount of donations that are going to come pouring in. Donations of food, donations of volunteer time, just like we're seeing in Los Angeles, in which we're, you know, getting ready to really bump up several notches, in fact, with the very welcome addition or partnerships with Molly Baszler and her whole campaign running for a city council of Los Angeles, and also with Hemmel's and others' organization Go Dharmic, with which Dr. Silas Rao is on the board of, coming to Los Angeles. So there's this convergence towards doing food healers to getting that done. Now, I've put a lot of focus recently on how do we get people to come together in the context of a vast network of conversations, or a network of networks of conversations, or if you max it out, it's the singular universe of transformational conversations, all hyper-connected. What's been missing is the hyper-connection. And we've been coming up with a lot of creative ways to both accomplish hyperconnection and also communicate it, notably hashtag Dutch42, heavenly hashtags, a more recent focus on bots. I don't want to name any of the bots because a lot of the naming is under development, but it's pretty exciting stuff. I mean, like really cool naming and branding for bots, which I think will help bring a lot of people into the conversation. But it feels to me like our messaging around all this has been unintentionally isolating. And let me tell you exactly what I mean by that. Okay. All right. So let's take one of our favorite acronyms, hashtag Dutch 42. What does Dutch stand for? The decentralized universe of transformational conversations that are hyperconnected. And, you know, if I were walking down the street and I didn't know about all this stuff that we talk about every day, Marco and Alan and everyone, James, etc. If I didn't know about all this and I heard someone talking about that, I would think that maybe that was some new, weird, new age religion. The decentralized universe of transformational conversations that are hyperconnected, right? And so in a way, you know, speaking it in those terms, which to us makes, you know, a universe of sense, given that, you know, this is the realm within which we work. But I'm just saying in terms of, you know, encouraging other people to join or self-identify as a universe of transformational conversations, it may be more geeky and complex than we really need, right? Let me just present an alternative, okay, to that as kind of an initial framing of the whole thing, right? Or a primary framing. I think a much easier to digest initial framing and coming out to the world would be through food healers. And with partnership with the Molly Baszler campaign, Godharmic, and other groups and organizations who were getting to know associated with Southern California, feeding, veganism, farming, veganic farming, et cetera, we're starting to all come together. There's this convergence that's happening that's going to put us in the media and give us a platform from which to expand. So I won't go into the details, but suffice it to say that we've got a real opportunity to get food healers to be center stage in pretty much everything we do. And the thing about that is especially with media coverage in Southern California, whose population measures in the tens of millions, right? Most of the population is in the lower third of the state. You know, centered around Los Angeles. It's just this huge and extremely wealthy part of the world, which is the media capital of the world. So you've got all these media personalities and companies and means of projecting and setting trends, right? So I think Food Healers Los Angeles is rather than try to, you know, so it's like if we're telling someone this whole narrative for the first time, if we center it around something that's very visual, very visceral, and they can see that, oh, got it. Okay, they're feeding everyone. And we say, yeah. And because it's all plant-based, this is helping push the transition, drive the transition away from animal agriculture to save the planet. And then speaking of saving the planet, we also need to cool the planet, hence marine cloud brightening, right? But it seems to be a better, I mean, of the three places we could enter, marine cloud brightening, food healers, and collective superintelligence, two of those are straight out of science fiction, brother, no matter how you slice it. Only one of them really gets you right in the gut. Let's start with the obvious. And the thing is, we're going to have such a huge audience, even just right there in Los Angeles, right? You know what I'm saying? And so why not build a critical mass there? Because that'll have the beneficial effect that as more and more people join in, right, from Los Angeles itself, as more and more people join the conversation, they join the conversation first. Next thing you know, they're volunteering at Food Healers, either volunteering to make the stew, deliver the stew, or serve the stew, right? And all the volunteers get to take food home. as much as they need for the next week or until we're doing the next big event, right? So I think we can get into quite a rhythm that really will win over the hearts and minds of everyone. And our meetings here on Zoom simply become kind of like almost like well, they just become a no-brainer. You want to learn about what we're doing? Yeah, come to our Zoom meeting, right? With COVID and everything, people aren't going to be as willing to show up at somebody's house or some industrial kitchen or some restaurant kitchen or something like that and start volunteering. Now, they want to get the scoop on Zoom first. Let's Zoom first. Let's get to know each other. So I'm just saying, this is a vector that we could really focus on and really, and not talk about the other, facets of this whole thing. The other, the reality. I mean, yeah, we'll talk about that, right? But the thing is, like, I mean, I guess the bottom line, Marco, where I'm headed with this is, let's lead with food. Unless it makes sense to lead with something else. So it really depends on the audience. But we've got food, we've got marine cloud brightening, we've got the reality of our situation, right? And the urgency of our situation. And then we have the meta solution of collective superintelligence. So we've got, really 4 big areas that we can lead with. And another thing I'm thinking, Marco, since we're inviting people to something, whether they come in person or whether they join via Zoom, inviting people to something where they have to show up and see and be seen, right? I think that requires a lot of trust on the part of the person who's coming. And so therefore, I think that personal contact is very important. In other words, I don't think we're going to have like the perfect video to share, hey, this is what we're doing and this is why you should join. I think it takes kind of like literally one-on-one people talking with their, their friend, their relative, their coworker, their neighbor, and saying, hey, I'm having these amazing conversations on Fridays, right? Because let's face it, that's what we want to get to. And the thing is, there's a lot of great conversations happening on Zoom. In order to get to this, hashtag Dutch 42, what we call the Dutch universe, the universe of transformational conversations, in order to really get to that place, we have to convince people who are already having Zoom meetings that are basically open to everyone, but they're not like heavily promoted and all that. We're asking them to get on the map and say, hey, we're part of the universe of transformational conversations and all are welcome. See, that's kind of the elephant in the room in terms of the big step forward that we're asking everyone to make. I'm kind of going off onto a tangent, which is all that is to say that in asking everyone to join a very, a totally decentralized, open source, totally public and transparent universe of transformational conversations, right? I'm saying that's a huge leap right there. And I think there's 2 major steps to getting to that place. The first one is, let's just call it contact. That's where you're sharing with someone one-on-one what this is all about. The second is they join the conversation, right? And once they join the conversation, they have an opportunity to get it. And there's a lot to get, and it's fairly intense and even traumatizing. Let's call a spade, right? Sometimes I wonder, how do we do it? We're under so much pressure. You and I and James and Ellen and others who really get it, right? Passing the feather.
Yeah, I'm a couple things running through my mind when you were talking about, lead with food healers. The saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And there's a point there, but the only thing that speaks louder than words is actions. And food healers is an action. And, you often say, get the dominoes tumbling. And I really, like, there was a vision when you were talking here about, lead with food healers, basic human right food, dominoes tumbling, fixing, two solutions for what we need, food healers, showing people that it's possible, not only possible, but very doable to feed everybody, nutritious, whole foods that don't require all the unspeakable things that have become our way of meat production. No living thing should be put through the horrible life cycle that we put animals through to have meat that isn't even necessary for our diet. Everything can, be done. So, just showing that happen, that action. I really saw the dominoes tumbling in my mind. It's like it's two things right now, and the marine cloud brightening is only a way to cool the planet fast enough so that we learn, so that we do the transformation we talk about, is transforming into a sustainable society. A bottom line is almost anything we're doing in our daily lives now is unsustainable. So the number one game we have to play is sustainability. And marine cloud brightening is just a way to give us cool the planet and keep it livable long enough that we learn to do all the things sustainably that need to be done. Drawdown, reforesting, and changing our eating habits to a sustainable way. It's really that simple. And but we're on a timetable too, as far as cooling the planet. The weather gets more unstable daily. And just today I took a little time and just went through my news feed on Facebook, and the number of people I know that are talking about flowers blooming, right now that shouldn't be blooming until February. It's December, January, February, March, months ahead of time. I'm in kind of Michigan in a warming trend right now that shouldn't be. It's December, and we're in, it was 40 some degrees today. Jamen, you mentioned that you're colder than normal in your area. We've had the heat domes on the West Coast, 500 people dying in a week in British Columbia due to the heat, and then followed by atmospheric rivers dropping enough water that it wiped out all the major train and highway in part of British Columbia. It's, if you can't see the handwriting on the wall there, I don't know. But I think I think, yeah, we need some action. We need some action. And there's nothing easier right now than learning how to cut up some vegetables for the stew and see how good, whole, natural, plant-based foods can be. All we have to do is uh, see how good it tastes. Everybody's willing to eat something that tastes good, and whole natural foods taste good. Whole plant-based foods. So all we got to do is get the ball rolling. And with that, I relinquish the feather.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Marco. Yeah, no, really, really good confirmation on all we're talking about here. And, in the end, I would say that, this is going to spread through word of mouth, right? Sure, you'll see images on social media of Darth Vader and singing and all this and free food and whatever, but you really have to hear it from another human being to get how big and cool this is, because it's not just about ending hunger and malnutrition, but ending cruelty, animal cruelty, and of course the assault on the planet that is animal agriculture. It's a big story. And then, of course, the marine cloud brightening is also very important. And see, just like in Scotland, just like we did at COP26, we'll have a dozen big posters out there, right, telling our story. How cool is that, right? And a singular invitation. And what I'm thinking, Marco, just try this on. You of course, the big yellow banner that we had in Scotland that said, join the conversation. I'm almost thinking it could be more straightforward to just say, join us on Zoom, and have like some screenshots of us talking on Zoom. And, join us on Zoom to learn more about food healers and different ways to participate, so that we feed Los Angeles plant-based foods, something like that. So that just puts it on the table. Join us. And then the invitation is clear. It's singular. Join us on Zoom. Not join the conversation, some nebulous thing. Make it, anyway, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. Because people who show up at the park to get the food, right? They're going to say, wow, this is really cool. Yeah, shoot. I've met them in person. Why not meet them on Zoom? We say, yeah, we meet every Friday on Zoom at this time. Just have it all super clear right there, so they can take a picture of it and then boom, just join us, right? Because I see this as sort of the gateway. Food is kind of the gateway drug, so to speak, very metaphorically. What a perfect, how many times have we heard, the key to a man's heart is through his stomach, right? Women throughout the world know that, right? And it's a beautiful thing. So let's leverage it. Let's break out the big key and stick it in and give it a nice crank and open the door to the conversation. To more and more people coming to join the conversation, and a lot of them will become volunteers. And there are people who become volunteers who never get on Zoom. It's all good, right? But the ones who become volunteers in person, physical volunteers, they get to know all the others, and it becomes this really beautiful community of people feeding Los Angeles cruelty-free, plant-based, nutritious, delicious foods with music provided by Darth. The force is with us. The force is strong with us. So let's use it. So I think we've got a singular opportunity to really make Los Angeles a huge launch pad for food healers, because then people in other cities, people in Flint, Michigan will say, look at what they're doing in LA. And they're offering to help. They say, just join the Zoom meeting. Well, Flint, Michigan, you guys are Eastern time, right? Okay. So, you know, that's 10 in the morning, Friday morning, join us, or 10 at night, take your pick. But join us for food healers, right? Anyway, so I think we've got a really nice, but again, anyone who's talking word of mouth to a friend, to a relative, can say, hey, you know, join this amazing conversation. And from here, we can kind of branch out and we can have a big calendar of other meetings, because let's say hundreds of people come through this channel, right? We need to have capacity for a whole bunch of simultaneous Zoom meetings on a whole bunch of different topics. The farmers might want to talk farming. The chefs might want to talk recipes and preparation. The logistics folks might want to talk logistics, demand, transportation, volume, et cetera, production planning. So you can have different groups that are going to be focusing on different things, right? And therefore different conversations. So I'm just seeing this can be the kind of the beginning of that. And then we create this nucleus here. And from this nucleus, we put out the broader imperative for the universe to wake up. What does waking up mean? It means for each neuron to say, yes, I'm willing to become a beacon, and start signaling to the other neurons through, you know, like tweeting. I'm going to say like tweeting, because we actually need something better than Twitter. And that's where DeChorus will come in, but that's a later topic, as is more on the bots. So the technologies here are very, very important. The universal calendar, all the great stuff that Vincent and company are working up in Catalyst and Trove. So lots of really good stuff to discuss on all these different fronts. So word of mouth, you can take your pick, but the easiest place to start will always be food healers, right? Community cafe, et cetera. And that whole story about ending hunger and ending cruelty. So anyway, with that, those are kind of some of the latest thoughts. And we'll go deeper into it on Friday when we meet. Again, check the email for the agenda and related links that we've mentioned here in this meeting. And with that, I pass the feather.
Yeah, I think, you know, what the two things that go together very well have always been good food and good conversation. So that's a winning combination there.
Yeah,
And
totally.
yeah,
Totally. You know, go ahead, Marco, go ahead.
and you know, don't be shy. You know, don't be afraid to question anything that we have to say. Questions welcome. Questions, you know, bring answers. And without questions, the kinds of answers like ships here for marine cloud brightening, without the question of how can we cool the planet, we wouldn't have the answer. So questions welcome. And share the email with anyone you think needs to hear some hope, and come and since through Zoom right now we can't quite hand you food yet through the computer, we can give you a heaping helping of hope. And that's what we're serving up Friday. And with that, I'm complete.
Beautiful. Thank you, Marco. And thank you all for watching. Yeah, I mean, the path just, it seems to be getting clearer and clearer what we need to do, what we need to focus on. But the food part is really, for all the reasons we've discussed, just a very clear thing to lead with. But again, by default, there are other people who are like, there with the climate emergency. Great, let's talk reality. Great, let's talk solutions. Great, let's talk marine cloud brightening. For them, food may be the fourth or fifth thing on the list to discuss with them. Other people may want to, jump in from the standpoint of collective intelligence, which is very, very important. So we really have these four different, very distinct poles from which to approach it. Actually, five, if you include narrative. Remember, we talked at the very beginning about, the default narrative and this new narrative. Well, these four poles really encompass the new narrative, but the narrative is a kind of a fifth pole in and of itself. The four being, the reality, the solutions, which really bifurcate into the two major ones, marine cloud brightening and food healers. And then, the fourth pole being, collective intelligence, evolving towards collective superintelligence, so that we can finally get smart enough as a species to get all these solutions developed and perfected and implemented in time, which are major, major feats, appear to be major, major feats, but I think it'll be very easy for the collective superintelligence to accomplish, which is why it's so urgent that we do that. So one being reality, the next two being the two solutions, the fourth one being collective intelligence, and the fifth being the narrative. So lead with whatever you want to lead, but food is kind of an obvious one. Food healers is an obvious one. And by building it out in Los Angeles and really giving that a big impulse, with support from Darth, and because the celebrities are going to get on board. What else are they going to do? Sit back and do lines of Coke watching their giant screen, home theater while sitting in a hot tub, right? They're going to become like Tony Montana in Scarface if they do too much of that. So better come to the park, grab the microphone, sing a song, and invite the community to get involved, and get involved yourself. Everybody get involved. The media is going to love it. City government's going to love it. The police are going to love it. Everyone's going to love it, right? And it's going to be controversial, right, for reasons that we'll get into. But bring on the controversy. We can answer any challenge very, very easily. So again, if in doubt, lead with food healers. Its twin sibling, its wonder twin is marine cloud brightening. Those are the wonder twins, food healers and marine cloud brightening, the wonder twin solutions. And then, as a foundation, we have two kind of foundations for all this. One is the reality, that is the urgency for these solutions. These solutions are not optional and they're urgent. And the other being collective intelligence. So four different things that are all quite unique, really. And then the narrative, which encompasses all of them. So these are the five kind of points of entry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can count them on one hand. Give me 5, Marco. Anyway, we'll be talking about all 5 tomorrow. Lots to talk about. We'll be talking bots. We'll be talking hashtags, heavenly hashtags. We'll be talking DeChorus and an evolution beyond Twitter and all kinds of cool things, the Dutch universe and many other things. All right, any final words, Marco, since I just delivered another whopping soliloquy?
I think it also becomes obvious that whatever your thing is, everybody has their thing, it could be food preparation, it could be serving, it could be, entertaining while people are eating. It could be any number of projects to from Project Drawdown to help get all the natural systems back on track so that carbonization of the atmosphere will not be a problem, but those are long-term projects. Meanwhile, we'll need some shipbuilders, etc., for marine cloud brightening. So there's whatever your thing is, there's a place for you in reality and not in the news. We need to dump the news for reality. And if we've left anything, hopefully questions in your mind, if nothing else, join us Friday.
Join us and invite all your friends, family, coworkers, colleagues, neighbors, acquaintances, everyone welcome. This is part of this radical step that I was talking about to the universe of transformational conversations. But I think food is just such a gentle on-ramp. Number one, because the thing is, you bring it up, the next thing you know, you're talking about it. The next thing you know, you're eating it. The next thing you know, you're serving it. The next thing you know, you're in the conversation about what this is all about. And this is really a revolution of hope, to quote President Vicente Fox, my old friend, right? This is a revolution of hope. Well, onward. I'm very excited for Friday. I feel really good about this recording. Thank you, Marco, brother. Thank you for watching. And with that, and we'll see you on Friday. Please spread the word, and we'll see you there, you and friends. See you soon.
Thanks, Jamen.
Thank you, Marco.